I burned my toast 3 mornings in a row before I admitted something was wrong. Not with the toaster. With me. My name is Nora Callahan. I'm 25 years old, and until about 8 months ago, I was the kind of person who had everything sorted out in neat little boxes. Early riser. Grocery list on Sundays. 1 glass of wine on Fridays, 2 if the week had been rough. A boyfriend named Derek who called me every other night and never once surprised me, which I used to think was a good thing. I worked as a junior project coordinator at a mid-sized architecture firm in Portland, Oregon. Not a glamorous job, but mine. I knew the coffee machine on the 2nd floor was broken every Tuesday for some reason. I knew which elevator took 30 seconds longer than the other. I knew the smell of the office at 7 in the morning before anyone else arrived. Stale air and the faint ghost of someone's lunch from the day before. I knew that office like I knew myself. Or at least I thought I did. Then one Monday in October, the firm brought in a new senior designer to lead the Henderson project, a complete overhaul of a historic building downtown that had been sitting untouched in our pipeline for 2 years. Nobody wanted the project. The timeline was brutal, the client was demanding, and the paperwork alone could bury a small country. She walked in carrying a battered leather portfolio under one arm and a large coffee in her other hand. Looked around the open floor plan like she was quietly deciding what she thought of it, and said to no one in particular, "Which one of you actually knows what's happening with Henderson?" Silence. I raised my hand. Slightly. Like a kid in the back of a classroom who isn't sure the answer is right. She looked at me. Really looked. The kind of eye contact that doesn't flinch and doesn't overstay, just lands and settles. "Perfect," she said. "I'm Jade. We're going to be spending a lot of time together." Her name was Jade Mercer. She was 34, 9 years older than me, which felt significant in a way I couldn't explain and didn't try to. And that was the beginning of something I had absolutely no category for. I want to ask you something before we go further. Do you remember the last time you met someone and felt, not attracted, not immediately, but just aware, like your nervous system filed a note you didn't ask it to file? That's the only honest way I can describe that first morning. Here is what I learned about Jade Mercer in the first 2 weeks, before I learned anything she told me directly. She was a lefty. She held her pen like she was protecting it from something. She had a habit of going very still when she was thinking, not frozen, just present. In a way most people aren't. She drank her coffee black until noon, and then switched to green tea, which she kept in a small tin she brought from home. She was polite with everyone but warm with very few people, and the difference between those two things was something you had to watch carefully to catch. She laughed rarely and fully, no half-laughs, no polite chuckles. When something was genuinely funny to her, it reached her whole face. I noticed all of this before I knew she had a 7-year-old daughter named B, or that she'd moved to Portland from Chicago 18 months ago after a divorce that she described, the one time it came up, as just a slow unraveling. No villain, no explosion. Just 2 people who stopped showing up for each other. I noticed all of it, and I told myself it was professional attentiveness. That's what I call it when I want to be honest, but not too honest. Professional attentiveness. We worked closely on the Henderson project for weeks. Late evenings in the conference room, site visits on gray Portland mornings, calls with a client who changed his mind about the lobby design 4 separate times. Jade handled the client with a patience that I genuinely admired. Calm, but never passive. Clear without being cold. I was good at logistics. She was good at the vision. We fit together in the work the way some people just do, without having to negotiate it. One evening, late, we were the last 2 people on the floor. She was reviewing blueprints spread across the long table, and I was cross-checking a budget spreadsheet nearby. The city outside the windows was doing what Portland does in November. Soft rain, amber streetlights, the kind of quiet that feels like a held breath. She said without looking up, "Can I ask you something personal?" I said, "Sure." "Why are you still here at 8 o'clock? You finished your part of this 2 hours ago." I didn't have a clean answer for that. I said something about wanting to make sure the numbers matched before the morning meeting. She looked up from the blueprints then, not accusingly, just carefully. "Okay," she said, and went back to work. But I sat with that question for a long time afterward. Why are you still here? If something in this story is already sitting with you, stay with it. Sometimes we need to hear someone else's version of a feeling before we can name our own. I was 25, which meant I had exactly enough life experience to be confident and exactly enough self-awareness to know that confidence was mostly a performance. I had dated boys since I was 16. There was never a moment of crisis, never a dramatic realization, never a scene. I liked Derek. He was kind and steady, and he made good pasta. When I thought about my future, he was in the background of it, unfocused. Like furniture you stop seeing because it's always been there. I had never, not once, let myself finish a certain kind of thought. You know the kind. The ones that arrive halfway and you redirect before they complete. Because somewhere along the way you decided that road didn't go anywhere you needed to go. There had been a girl in my college dorm, Priya, dark hair, loud laugh, who I used to stay up talking to until 3 a.m, even on weeknights. I had loved being around her in a way that was louder than friendship, but I had never named it. She transferred sophomore year, and I told myself I missed her the way you miss anyone who leaves. I had been very practiced at telling myself things. The crack showed up on a Tuesday. Jade and I had gone out after a site visit to grab lunch, just the two of us, a diner 2 blocks from the Henderson building, red vinyl booths and laminated menus. We ordered the same thing without realizing it. She laughed at that. One of her real laughs. And something in my chest did something I didn't have a word for. Over grilled cheese and tomato soup, we talked about things that weren't work. She told me about Bee, about how her daughter had recently become obsessed with birds and could identify 18 species by call, which made Jade quietly proud in the way parents get about unexpected things. I told her about growing up in a small town in eastern Oregon, about how I'd moved to Portland at 18, feeling like I'd been holding my breath for years. "And now?" she asked. "Now I'm breathing," I said. "Mostly?" She tilted her head slightly. "What's the part that's not?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at my soup. I thought about Derek, about the apartment we'd half discussed sharing, about the future that was being built around me in a shape I had approved without designing. "I think I've been making decisions based on what looks right from the outside," I said finally, "instead of what feels right in here." I touched my sternum, self-conscious immediately after. But she just nodded, slow and serious, like that was the most normal thing someone could say. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I spent most of my 20s doing that too." "What city are you listening from right now?" I keep thinking about all the different places this voice reaches, different streets, different weather, different stories that maybe rhyme with mine. I broke up with Derek 3 weeks after that lunch. It wasn't because of Jade. I want to be clear about that, or maybe I want to be honest about it, which is different. It wasn't because of her specifically. It was because of what she made me notice about myself, the way certain conversations felt alive and others felt like going through motions. The way I'd been building a life that fit on paper, but felt like wearing someone else's coat. Derek was gracious about it. He said, "I think we've been doing this out of habit for a while." He wasn't wrong. I went home that night and sat in my apartment for a long time without turning on any lights. I didn't cry. I just sat there, in the early dark, and felt something very quiet and very large begin to shift. I want to tell you about fear, because this story doesn't work without it. Not the dramatic kind. Not the kind that makes your hands shake or your voice crack. The quiet kind. The kind that lives in the back of your throat when you're about to say something true, and your whole body asks you to reconsider. That kind of fear is the hardest to explain to people who haven't felt it, because from the outside it looks like nothing. You look fine. You show up to work. You answer emails. You refill the paper tray in the printer when it runs out because you're the only one who notices. Inside, though, you're doing constant math. If I feel this, what does that mean? If this is real, what changes? Who finds out? Who judges? Who leaves? I did that math for a long time. Jade and I had a routine by then, not planned, just grown. The way routines do between people who spend a lot of time near each other and stop pretending they mind. Coffee together most mornings before the floor filled up. A walk around the block when the afternoon got too long. Texts sometimes in the evening. Nothing heavy. A funny observation about the Henderson client. a photo B had drawn that Jade would caption with something dryly affectionate. One evening, she sent me a picture of a bird on her window ledge. Under it, she wrote, "B says it's a Steller's Jay." I believe her completely. I laughed out loud in my empty apartment. Then I sat with the warmth of it a little longer than I needed to. That's it, I thought. That's the thing I keep not naming. I wasn't spiraling. I wasn't in crisis. I was just finally, quietly, letting a thought finish. The firm held an end-of-quarter event at a rooftop bar in the Pearl District. The kind of thing where everyone dresses slightly better than usual and makes small talk over drinks that cost too much. I almost didn't go. I went because Jade texted, "You're coming, right? I don't know enough people here to survive this alone." She was standing near the railing when I arrived, looking out at the city, wine glass held loosely in one hand. She'd worn a dark green blazer I hadn't seen before. Her hair, usually pulled back, was down. I stopped walking for a second, just a second. She turned and saw me and smiled. Not the professional smile, the real one. And I crossed the roof toward her, and we stood side by side looking at Portland all lit up below us, and I thought, I am so tired of pretending I don't know what this is. We stayed there long after everyone else had moved inside, talking about nothing important, shoulders close. The cold air doing that thing cold air does where it makes everything feel more honest. And then, without looking at me, she said, "Can I say something that might make things weird?" "You can try," I said. A pause. The city hummed below. "I look forward to you," she said simply. "Not just at work. I look forward to you." I turned to look at her profile. She was still facing the city. "I know what you mean," I said. "Yeah?" "Yeah." She finally looked at me, and we just stayed there in that honest, unresolved, terrifying, completely real moment for a while. That felt like the bravest thing either of us had done. If this story is touching something in you, maybe something you've been carrying quietly for a while, I want you to know that's okay. You're allowed to feel it. You're allowed to take your time with it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more stories like this one. There are more of them. You're not alone in it. Jade's contract with the firm was project-based. Henderson was almost finished. That meant she was almost finished. In the building, on our floor, within arm's reach of my mornings and afternoons, and the quiet routines we'd accidentally built. We didn't talk about it directly, the way you don't touch a bruise on purpose, but it was there, shaping the time we spent together, giving it an edge. The project wrapped on a cold Friday in January. The team had a small celebration. Cake in the conference room, the Henderson client on speakerphone saying things like, "This exceeded our expectations," and everyone smiling politely. Afterward, people filtered out early because it was a Friday. Jade and I cleaned up the conference room together. Neither of us had suggested it, we just both stayed. When the last paper plate was in the trash, and the room was quiet again, she leaned back against the long table and looked at me. "So," she said. "So," I said. "I'm going to be honest with you. Okay. I have no idea what the right move is here. I'm 34 and you're 25 and I have a kid and a complicated recent past, and I don't want to do the thing where I assume you feel what I feel and get it wrong." I took a breath. "You're not getting it wrong," I said. She looked at me steadily. "No. No." A pause. Something settling. "This is new for me," I said, because she deserved the honest version. "The specific shape of this is new. I'm not scared of it, but I want you to know it's new." She nodded slowly, not surprised exactly, understanding. "New is okay," she said. "New is actually kind of good." We got dinner that night. A small Thai place near my apartment. Paper lanterns. The kind of relaxed that only comes when two people have stopped pretending they're something less than what they are. We talked for 3 hours. About the things that actually mattered. What we wanted, what we were figuring out, what it meant for her to let someone in after the divorce, what it meant for me to step toward something that didn't come with a map. She told me B asked about me sometimes. She says you seem like a good listener. Coming from a 7-year-old bird expert, she said, that was high praise. I met B the following weekend. She was exactly as serious and funny as I'd expected from everything her mother had described. She showed me 6 bird photographs on her iPad, and quizzed me on their names with the academic focus of a professor. I got 2 right. She gave me a provisional pass. Jade, watching from across the kitchen, mouthed, "She likes you," about a month in, on a Saturday night after B was asleep. We were sitting on Jade's couch with the TV on low. Some documentary neither of us was really watching, and she asked me quietly, as if the question had been waiting all evening for the right opening, "Will we sleep in the same bed?" The question was simple. It was also everything underneath the simple. "Will this be real? Will you still be here in the morning? Are we doing this? Fully, honestly, without one foot out the door?" I looked at her. Her face was calm, but her eyes were asking. "Is that what you want?" I asked. "It's what I want," she said. I just didn't want to assume. "Don't assume," I said. "Ask." And the answer is yes. She smiled, slow, the real kind, and leaned her head back against the couch cushion. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay." I'm not going to dress it up into something it wasn't. The months that followed were honest, and sometimes hard. There were people in my life who needed time to understand. My mom went quiet for a few weeks in a way that cost me more than I showed. My coworkers were professional and kind, and some of them were privately confused. Which is fine. People are allowed to need time. What I'll tell you is this: not one difficult conversation was as bad as the fear of it had been. Not one. And there were mornings. There were so many ordinary, unremarkable, perfect mornings, where I would wake up in a place that felt genuinely like mine, and the quiet in my chest, where that small dissenting voice used to live, was still there. Still. Settled. Finally at rest. Jade and I moved in together 8 months after Henderson wrapped. B got to pick the color for her room. A very specific shade of teal that took us 3 trips to the hardware store to find, which she called almost right, almost right. Yes, that one. There's a bird feeder outside the kitchen window now. B maintains it with the dedication of a wildlife conservationist. On Sunday mornings, she brings us field guides over breakfast and teaches us things we didn't know we needed to know about the birds of the Pacific Northwest. It is, without question, the life I didn't know I was missing. Here is what I want to leave you with. Figuring yourself out at 25, or 30, or 42, or any age, is not a failure of self-knowledge. It's just proof that we grow, that life keeps offering us new rooms we didn't know were in the house. You don't owe anyone a tidy timeline. You don't owe the version of you from 5 years ago any loyalty if that version wasn't entirely honest. You're allowed to arrive late at a truth and still claim it fully. The bravest thing I ever did wasn't grand. It wasn't a speech or a dramatic declaration. It was just staying in the room when everything in me wanted to leave, letting a thought finish, letting someone in. That's it. That's the whole brave thing. If this story found you at the right moment, if something in it felt less like fiction and more like a mirror, then stay. There are more stories here, told the same way. Honestly, carefully, without rushing the parts that need room to breathe. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and drop a comment telling me what city you're listening from right now, because knowing you're out there, wherever you are, makes this feel less like talking into the dark. I see you. Whatever you're figuring out, I see you.